In 1976, the Cold War was not just a political standoff fought in conference rooms and behind closed doors. It was a silent war of shadows, signals, and assumptions, where every unknown carried the potential to change history. Above all else, the sky had become the most dangerous frontier of all. Satellites scanned endlessly, radar stations listened day and night, and intelligence analysts stared at blurry photographs, trying to imagine what their enemies were building beyond reach. And among all the mysteries that haunted American defense planners, one aircraft inspired more fear than any missile or tank ever could. Its outline appeared massive and unnatural, its wings sharp, its twin tails towering. It was called the MiG-25 Foxbat, and for years, it represented everything the United States feared the Soviet Union might have achieved in secret. On paper, the Foxbat was terrifying. It was believed to fly faster than Mach 3, higher than any NATO interceptor, and to be built from exotic materials that suggested the Soviets had leapfrogged Western aerospace technology entirely. Some analysts believed it was agile enough to dogfight and powerful enough to outrun anything in the American arsenal. The fear wasn't just about the aircraft itself, but about what it symbolized. If the Soviets could build this, what else had they already built? That fear directly influenced American aircraft design, pushing billions of dollars into new fighters like the F-15 Eagle, designed specifically to counter a threat that, at the time, no one truly understood. Yet the Foxbat's greatest secret wasn't hidden in steel or engines. It was hidden in the doubts of one man. Viktor Belenko was a talented pilot in the Soviet air defense forces, trusted, disciplined, and carefully vetted. Flying the MiG-25 was a privilege granted only to a select few. But beneath the surface, Belenko was deeply disillusioned. Years of living under a rigid system filled with empty promises, corruption, and ideological pressure had taken their toll. He saw firsthand the gap between propaganda and reality, between what the Soviet state claimed to be and what it actually was. Promotions were political, resources were scarce, and innovation was punished rather than rewarded. Over time, the pride of flying the world's fastest interceptor could no longer outweigh the sense that his life was being spent serving a lie. On the morning of September 6, 1976, Belenko took off from Chugyevka Air Base in the Soviet Far East on what was supposed to be a routine training mission. Nothing about that flight plan suggested history was about to change. Yet once airborne, with the coastline stretching beneath him and the Sea of Japan ahead, Belenko made his decision. Without warning, he broke away from his formation, rolled his MiG-25 downward, and dove toward the ocean. He descended to just 30 meters above the waves, flying dangerously low to stay beneath Soviet radar coverage. Every second was a risk. One mistake, one unexpected wave, one mechanical failure, and the Foxbat would become his coffin. As he pushed the engines harder, alarms began to matter less than fuel gauges. The MiG-25 was infamous for its appetite, and Belenko knew he was gambling everything on reaching Japan before the tanks ran dry. Behind him, Soviet radar operators scrambled in confusion. Interceptors were launched, but by the time they realized what was happening, Belenko was already gone, racing west, skimming the sea, invisible to most sensors. It was not an act of impulse. It was a calculated escape, executed with precision, courage, and the understanding that there would be no second chance. Hours later, with fuel nearly exhausted, Belenko spotted the coastline of Hokkaido. Hokkaido Airport came into view, a civilian runway never meant to receive a machine like the Foxbat. The landing was violent and desperate. The MiG-25 slammed onto the runway, overshot the pavement, tore through grass, and came to rest just short of a public road. Civilians froze in disbelief, watching a Soviet interceptor sit smoking in front of them, a symbol of the Cold War suddenly made real. Belenko climbed out of the cockpit, fired a warning shot into the air to keep crowds away, and surrendered. In that moment, one of the greatest intelligence coups in history had already begun. The Soviet Union reacted with fury, demanding the immediate return of both pilot and aircraft, accusing Japan and the United States of provocation and theft. but it was already too late. Engineers, intelligence officers, and analysts descended on Hokkaido with cameras, notebooks, and tools. For the first time, the West could touch the aircraft that had haunted it for years. And almost immediately, the myths began to collapse. The Foxbat was not made from futuristic titanium alloys as feared, but from heavy nickel steel, hand-welded and brutally strong. It was built for durability, not elegance. The massive engines that gave it legendary speed were revealed to be a double-edged sword. Yes, the MiG-25 could reach incredible velocities, but only briefly. Sustained flight beyond Mach 2.8 caused catastrophic engine damage. Every high-speed sprint was essentially a controlled act of self-destruction. This was not a fighter meant to duel in the sky. It was a blunt force interceptor, designed to launch, climb, sprint, and intercept a target at any cost. Then came the avionics. Instead of cutting-edge solid-state electronics, American engineers found vacuum tubes, technology they considered obsolete. At first, there was laughter. Then came understanding. Vacuum tubes were resistant to electromagnetic pulses from nuclear detonations and could operate reliably in extreme cold. They were easy to repair in remote Soviet air bases with limited infrastructure. The Foxbat wasn't technologically backward. It was purpose-built for Soviet realities. It existed to counter very specific threats, primarily high-altitude American aircraft like the State Route 71 Blackbird. As the aircraft was dismantled and shipped piece by piece for deeper analysis, the strategic consequences rippled outward. Every wire was mapped, every system photographed, every assumption corrected. The Pentagon realized that the fear-driven design race had overshot the actual threat. The F-15 Eagle, built in response to the imagined agility of the Foxbat, was now understood to be vastly superior in almost every way. American air dominance was no longer a question. It was a fact. Meanwhile, Viktor Belenko's value extended far beyond the aircraft. He provided insight into Soviet training, morale, discipline, and daily life within the military. He described shortages, alcoholism, rigid command structures, and a culture that punished initiative. The image of a perfectly efficient Soviet war machine evaporated. When Japan finally returned the MiG-25 to the Soviet Union, it did so in crates. Every secret was gone. The Foxbat would fly again, but its aura of invincibility was dead. Belenko would spend the rest of his life in the United States, often remarking that the most shocking discovery he made was not military technology, but the abundance of food in a simple American supermarket. His defection exposed more than an aircraft. It exposed the power of illusion, the danger of assumptions, and the human cost hidden behind ideology. In the end, the fastest jet of its era was defeated not by missiles or fighters, but by one man's refusal to keep believing a lie. And that single flight changed the balance of power in the skies for a generation.